All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We've got Noah here with Alberta Health Services Mental Health Promotion, and this is the third of our video series on mental well-being. Just so you know, this is being recorded on Zoom and we will post it later on YouTube. But just a heads up, just if you're uncomfortable in any way, just change your name to be anonymous and turn off your camera. And there will be a discussion at the end. And Noah just mentioned that for the February date, he's not able to, that date no longer works. So we're just looking to reschedule it. So maybe at the end we could have a chat about what date works best. So welcome, Noah.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. We're looking at our mind and our health. Today our focus is on stress. As we do every week, let's go over and look at a little bit of a recap. Can we get a recap on what is mental health? Like, how have we defined mental health that we've been using throughout our presentations? Is there any help? Anybody remember how we've defined mental health as we're moving forward? So if nobody remembers, the definition for mental health that we're working with is the capacity for each and all of us to feel, think, and act in ways that enhances our ability to enjoy life and deal with the challenges that we face. When we talk about mental health, we're talking about the positive sense of emotional and spiritual well-being that respects the importance of culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity. So that is the definition of mental health that we're working with. And as Monica puts it quite succinctly, everything that contributes to the well-being of our mind is what we mean when we talk about mental health. So the way we think, one, the way we feel, two, the way we behave or the way we act is the three prongs approach that we use when we are talking about mental health, because all these things, our thinking, our feeling, and all our actions and behavior sits in our mind, not in our brain, in our mind. And that makes it a little bit important for us to distinguish. So what is stress? This one I want people to contribute. So you can put it in the chat to help me, or you can just unmute yourself and share. What do you think stress is?
A sense of being overwhelmed or out of control.
Yes,
at times.
Yes, a sense of being overwhelmed or out of control. Thank you, Olivia. Anyone else? I'm guessing Olivia is the only one who has felt stressed before.
Stress could even just be good things, though. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's just a change.
Yes, stress could be a good thing. It could be a natural change. Ooh, Rebecca, you're getting really, really close to the definition that I have on my screen that I'm going to share. Thank you very much. Both of you are right. It is how we've come to understand stress that we need to sort of put it a little bit defined, put it a little bit more concrete as we move forward for our session. So I'm hoping this gives you a slightly new perspective on understanding stress. So when we talk about stress, we mean any physical, anything, any mental, any emotional, any strain that or tension that is put on you or on anyone. That is what we mean by stress. So the idea of me asking you a question requiring you to mentally think is stressful. Now, the interesting thing is we do not feel the stress because it is so natural to us. We do not feel it because we perceive that we have the necessary resources to deal with the demand. So when I asked the question about what do you think stress is, that question of thinking about stress is not stressful because you have the ability to process thought. You have the ability to think. If I asked you to stand up it is not stressful because you have the ability to do that. You perceive that you have the resources to do that. And I always use this example every time I do this presentation because it gets a little bit of a chuckle, and I like it when people engage with me. And the idea is you and the best partner in life that you have, and I say the best partner in life because I think I have one too. You have this exciting communication level where you talk about everything. And as you know, communications makes relationship. You just jive so well together. And then one day you get a call that, oh, by the way, from your partner, that my parents are surprising us today. They're just flying through, going to Florida, and decided to stop by and surprise us before they go. All right. That is not necessarily stressful if you have a great relationship with your in-laws, right? Not stressful. If the following conversation happens immediately after, oh, and I told them tonight, you're making your favorite, like my favorite lasagna for dinner. Mind you, you were at work, running late, so you haven't done the grocery yet. Yes, you were planning on doing the lasagna, but like you thought about it and you pushed it to the weekend, and now all of a sudden they conclude we'll be home in about 17 to 20 minutes. You're making lasagna that you haven't done grocery for in 17 minutes for your in-laws. Now immediately it starts feeling stressful. And the reason why it starts feeling stressful is because you perceive that you do not have the resources to meet that demand that is being put on you. The moment you perceive that you have the resources to meet the demand, the stress level doesn't even register. That's how I want us to think about stress. When we talk about stress, though, because as Olivia mentioned earlier, because it's registered when we are overwhelmed, it's important to think about what are some of the signs and symptoms of excess stress. This is very similar to signs and symptoms of anxiety because they are very, very linked together. They're very linked. And next session, when we talk about anxiety, I'll break it down a little bit more. But here, these are some of the signs and symptoms of excess stress. So when we are overwhelmed. For a lot of people, your mind is racing. And when we say your mind is racing, you can't focus on any specific thought. Some people get dizzy. Some people actually get a blurred vision. A lot of people can't sleep, so they get bags under their eyes. They have difficulty swallowing. It looks like there's a lump in your throat, and your heart beats faster. You start sweating, you start trembling, your knees and your joints all start shaking, and there's an explanation to it that the next video that I'm going to share would sort of give a little bit more light to. But is this similar, or does everybody feel they're stressed differently? Does these general things that I've posted match anybody's stress levels? And when they are overwhelmed, do you feel any of these signs or symptoms?
I do and I don't. I think I kind of get quite a few of those things, but when I'm really stressed, I go into isolation mode and avoidance, and I kind of shut down, I guess is one way to describe it.
So what you're describing, Olivia, is the response to the stress.
Yeah.
How you respond to the stress. Everybody responds differently, and we'll go into that a little bit after this video. But what I'm hoping we would understand is the ability to know, what does it look like when I'm stressed? Like, how does it feel like in my body when I'm stressed?
Frozen.
Frozen, yes. Cold.
Frozen and just kind of lost
Yeah.
feeling and not too
Lost.
sure where to
Yeah.
start, where to begin, and
Yeah.
just kind of stand there looking like a deer in headlights
Yeah,
kind of vibe.
fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Olivia. Anybody else? How does it feel in your body when you're overwhelmed with stress? I think it's important that we pay attention to how stress feels for us, because it often at times, us not paying attention to how stress feels to us determines how we respond to stress. And because it is linked with anxiety, it also leads into a lot of us experiencing a lot of anxiety, right? And this will become a little bit more clearer when we talk about anxiety in the next session. Let me go back first and caveat a little bit of this video for everyone. So this video is just a few minutes long, and hopefully it's clear for everybody in terms of the sound, because I think that's what's mainly important. And thank you, Monica, for sharing that. You know, the body core can tighten and feel sore, especially if you hold the stress for a long time. Thank you. So this is the video that's talking about the feeling of stress and the response that usually naturally comes to us. And then we'll delve deeper into it afterwards.
Humans, like all species, have self-protective mechanisms to help us survive. Our fight, flight or freeze survival response, the FFF for short, is designed to mobilize our brain and body to fight an enemy, run from an avalanche, or freeze to hide from a predator. Our brain sometimes misinterprets safe situations as dangerous and can set off false alarms. When the amygdala, our brain's watchdog, senses and barks danger, our body enters survival mode quicker than our rational mind can react, leaving it trying to figure out why we feel in mortal danger. When the FFF alarm is sounded, we start to breathe more quickly and shallow, causing hyperventilation, and our heart starts beating very fast. These changes can cause strong chest pain, which many people interpret as symptoms of a heart attack, when in fact it's just a result of the FFF activation, which can be relieved through breathing exercises. As a way of getting you ready for action, blood is diverted towards the major muscle groups. Blood flows away from our digestive system, causing the bladder to relax, and we might feel the need to pee. The mouth goes dry, nausea can occur, and we get the butterflies feeling in our stomach. Blood also rushes from extremities, leaving us with cold hands, but often sweaty palms as the action-ready body starts sweating to avoid overheating. Legs and hands can start trembling and feel weak, while tension starts building in big muscles like the thighs, neck, and shoulders. In our head, FFF alarms cause our brain to focus on negative memories, probably so it can scan them to avoid danger and negative outcomes. We get tunnel vision as our pupils dilate to increase our focus and long vision, but as a result, we lose our peripheral vision. FFF activation also reduces our ability to recognize differences in facial expressions. Too much oxygen and too little CO2 can result in dizziness or lightheadedness, which many people interpret as signs that they might faint. But because fainting is caused by a drastic drop in blood pressure, and because the FFF increases both our heart rate and blood pressure, it's nearly impossible to faint when this happens. Over time, depression, anxiety, and high levels of stress all harm the brain's ability to slow or cancel false FFF activations, causing them to happen more often. Knowing the symptoms of false activations makes it easier to recognize and reduce their effects. At Tanky Boxing, you can learn both bottom-up and top-down techniques to reduce false FFF activation and bring your body back to balance.
Any questions? Does that make a little bit of sense now? Okay, so we're going to delve a little deeper into the stress response. And the stress response that the video talked about is a fight, flight, or freeze response that we have to stress. And everybody reacts to stress differently in different situations. So um, it's not all the time that you react the same way, right? So you see yourself fit into a couple of different ways that we find ourselves in. So let's start with the fight or flight. So people who fight usually become a lot more assertive or aggressive when they're stressed out, and take it out on what they perceive the threat to be or the challenge to be. It might not necessarily be where the threat or the challenge is, but that's what they perceive, or that's how they have interpreted it. So people who who flee, so everything they run away from everything that they think is stressful, and that includes any confrontational conversations or anything in that sense that they perceive this is where the stress is coming from. They flee from it. So people who don't want to talk about or deal with things that are stressing them directly or head on, it becomes quite important to understand that this is their natural response to stress. And then there are those who freeze, and they do absolutely nothing in when they are stressed out. And Olivia shared earlier that a lot of people actually shut down and isolate when they feel stressed out, and that falls into the freezing capacity. There are those who get flooded with emotions when they are stressed out. Do you know anybody who starts crying when they're really stressed out, or starts giggling for no reason when they're stressed out? Yes, this is their natural response. It's called flooded. The
That's me.
emotions, yes, excellent. The emotions become almost all over the place. And like literally, you're stressed out and you're like giggling or you're crying, and it's not anything to do with the situation that's stressful. May not be something that you giggle about, but you can't help yourself, right? That's their natural response. And then there are those who fawn or become very cooperative in order to as a way of responding to the stress. And sadly, this has been seen in victims of assault, victims of uh, sexual and physical assault. This becomes their response. So it's almost like if I'm overly friendly, then you won't hurt me, kind of thing, kind of response to stressful situations. And sadly, I fall into this. When I'm stressed out, everything becomes a joke, and I don't see the dangers. I don't see dangerous things as dangerous because I want to make them not dangerous, right? And here's an example. Wow, it's been a long time. I can't believe it. Almost 7 years ago, when I was coming to um, Ponoka from Toronto, I drove in through Canada because I wanted to see how beautiful Canada is, and I was bringing my car, so I thought it's best that I drive. And I was fortunate enough to drive with my best friend to do the journey together. On our way, we get to Kenora, Ontario, and we're supposed to sleep in Kenora. But we got there, it's early fall, late summer, early fall. The sun's still up. It's only like 7:50. So we're thinking, oh, we can still use the sunlight because the sun's not gonna set till like past 9. We can use it to get to the next town or the next village. And nobody told us that once you get to Kenora, there's nothing until you get to Manitoba. So we didn't ask. So that's why we didn't know. And we're just using the GPS on the phone, and it says that like the road that we're on will lead us all the way to Alberta. So we just got back into the car after we filled the tank and just kept going. And then we kept going. And then nightfall. And then we weren't really seeing anything, and it was becoming a little scary. So we're like, okay, we're just going to pull to the side of the road and then sleep a little bit. And immediately as the sun is coming up, we just wake up and go. So we set an alarm for like 4:30, and we sleep. 2 guys in the car. We're able to sleep completely. We wake up, and I want to relieve myself before I continue driving. And I get out of the car, and I'm helping myself. And what I see in the middle of the road, about maybe 20, 30 meters from me, is a black bear cub. And I saw it. My immediate reaction was, oh my God, it's so cute. I got to keep it as a pet. That is my natural response. I didn't see it as dangerous. I just see it as a cute, cuddly thing that, we should keep in our car. So I'm literally walking towards it going, oh my God, it's so cute. Fortunate thing is my friend was up and he calls out and asked me to come into the car. So I turn around to go and walk to convince him to come and let us grab the cub to have as a pet. And as I said to him, he says later that we would be the only people with a black bear cub for a pet in Alberta. Yeah. The moment I sat down, he starts the car to drive off. It was my turn to drive, but he didn't trust how I was acting. And the moment he started the car, the mama bear stands up on the other side of the road. Biggest bear I've ever seen. I've never seen like a black full-grown bear before. Not that I've seen a baby one before either, but not even at the zoo. So I saw it and I was like, my response was like, oh my God, a bigger one. So we drive off, and after 20 minutes or so, my friend turns to ask me, what's wrong with you? I'm like, what do you mean by what's wrong with you? It's like, we saw a bear and your thought was to keep it as a pet. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just thought we could, because even though the stressful situation was gone and it's dissipated from my mind, now I'm thinking that would have been a stupid thing to do. And he's like, yeah, it would, because bears will eat people, or they don't like being threatened by people. So again, that's how I react. So my natural response for the longest time, I just thought I never got stressed. And that experience put me clearly in the fawning category. And I started going over in my life and recognizing that every time I'm stressed out, I turn whatever is stressful into a jovial thing, into a joke, something that is not threatening at all. That's my natural response. So you're telling me a really, really like stressful situation, and I'm trying to find the jokes for it through it. It's my way of dealing with stress. I've been told it's not fun to hang around me in stressful situations. I've been told. And the last one that we're going to talk about, and a lot of people experience this, is fatigue. I had a session in the Rimby school, and I was doing a session on stress with the grade 7 students, and I mentioned this, and the teacher was like, now it makes sense, because like the kids could be excited and bouncing off the walls. You ask them to sit down and we're going to do a math test, and all of a sudden people are feeling sleepy and they're yawning, and I'm like, yep, that's the stress just fatigues their system, right? So the natural response is, if I sleep, by the time I wake up, the stress will be over, right? That's the natural response for some people. And based on that, in that classroom, that's when I had the best definition for stress. And I beg your ears as I directly quote a grade 7 student on their definition of stress. How do they know they're stressed out? And they responded, I feel like I need to shit, but I can't even fart. That's how I know I'm stressed. And I was like, that's somebody who's paying attention to their body. That's very important that we do that we understand how it feels like for us when we're stressed out. Any questions so far about our natural responses to stress? Okay. All right. So how do we cope with stress, or how are we supposed to cope with stress? I would say there are about 3 ways that people cope with stress. There's the cognitive, emotional way of coping with stress, that is dealing with the feelings that is created once you're stressed. And then there is the psychological way of dealing with stress, which is because stress is the perceived lack of resources, people go into a mode of thinking of the resources that they can have to deal with this challenge. And once that happens, we call that the psychological way of coping with stress. And then there's the behavioral way of coping with stress. That's people change the things that they do when they're stressed. And so when I'm beginning to feel stressed, I'm going to go for a walk, right? I'm changing my situation. I'm actively doing something to help me cope with the stress. And we're going to talk about hold this idea with the cognitive, emotional, the psychological, and the behavioral. Hold that in thought, and then after the next video, we'll sort of look at this again through a different lens. Okay, so hopefully the audio is on and clear at your end for this next video.
Stress is usually seen as something we need to avoid. This is not true. We need stress, and we need our body's stress hormone cortisol to rise and fall throughout the day. Stress helps us wake up in the morning, helps us focus, learn, and remember new things. It's when people experience too much stress and start having difficulties coping that stress becomes a problem. High levels of stress can disrupt the natural changes in the body's stress response system and start to affect our physical and mental health. Over time, accumulated stress can result in false FFF response activations. When trying to measure our stress tolerance, the bucket analogy can be helpful. Our stress tolerance, or the size of our bucket, is a product of our genes, personality, and life experiences, and its size varies from person to person. The water in this analogy is the combination of all the stress in your life. We use the coping strategies we have available to keep our bucket from overflowing. They are like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket. Stress can include training, work, school, relationships, finances, moving, changing jobs, or the loss of a loved one. Both positive and negative experiences will affect the water level. A big bucket can hold more water or stress before it overflows. With a smaller bucket, less water is required for the water or stress level to become critical. While you can't change the size of your bucket, you can make life adjustments to reduce water coming in. You can also learn new coping strategies and stress management techniques to allow water to drain out. Mind tools, exercise, quality sleep, relaxation, and sharing your feelings with friends are some examples of effective water taps. Staying up late, sleeping in, drugs, inactivity, procrastination, suppressing or ignoring problems are examples of unhelpful coping strategies or false taps. They might give temporary relief, but actually result in water flowing back into your bucket. This video was created by Brave, Building Healthy Minds.
Any questions so far? Any comments? So
Video is awesome. It'd be good for kids too. It makes it really simple to understand.
yes, so it's on YouTube. It's last time I checked, it was available 2 years ago. It's called Stress Bucket. If you type in Stress Bucket, you would see that video. It should be one of the first things that pop up. And I agree with you. Every time I do stress for young people, I use this video to help kind of break it down. Well, every time I talk about stress, I use this video. So not just for young people, because I think it makes it clear and makes sense. So if we look at what was talked about, so the taps of letting stress out could be emotion focused, so they could focus on the feelings that is created, but it could also be problem focused, so it could be psychological in nature or behavioral in nature. So people who get stressed out and look at what is stressing me out, they identify their stresses. So for example, it could be a work stress that I have, because I have a deadline coming up for work. So like that's what's stressing me out. That's what's literally pouring into my bucket now to fill me up. People have emotion focus will be, how can I do to feel better from the stress, the feelings that the stress is creating? Or people can have, what can I do to reduce the stress? How can I chip at the deadline that I have so that the stress that I'm not feeling it anymore? What are some of the tools that I can get to be able to do that? And interpersonal stress could be, I really don't like my office, like the person I work in the office with, but I really, really love my job, but I really don't like the people that I have to do my job with. That's an interpersonal stress. So then you have to figure out, what's the emotion aspect of it? Do I pretend to like them so that they go away quicker, or do I deliberately just focus on, how do I do my job without interacting with these people, or what is the solution, or how am I going to cope with the stress? And intrapersonal stress, what we mean by that is, it's the stress that is created because of a conflict within yourself. So the example of, I like my work, but I don't like the people that I work with, is interpersonal, because it's between you and other people. Intrapersonal is, I like my work, I like my home, but I don't like the travel between my work and my home, right? So it's something that only you can address, right? That's intrapersonal, it's within yourself. And then there's environmental stress, that includes the sounds, the noises, the filth, whatever the situation is, that's what we mean by environmental stress. All those are ways of dealing with it. Sadly, in I'll say like more so in Alberta than I did experience in Ontario, is like the availability of alcohol, and it being used as like a coping skill for a lot of people when it comes to stress. So that is an unhelpful behavior, because once you engage in it, you don't really work at the stress. It just numbs the emotional aspect. So it doesn't help you emotionally in coping with it, and it doesn't help you in dealing with the problem either. So it is a deliberate, unhelpful, or false start that you can do. It would give you an escape for a few minutes, but you'll be back into you'll be back at the beginning all over again. So that's stress. I usually share this handout with people, and I encourage people to actually sit down and write, what are the stresses, what are the things that are on your mind, that are the demands that are being placed on you. Be sincere with yourself, be fair to yourself, right? Write all those demands down. Look at how you've been coping with them. And are those unhelpful coping skills? Are they helpful coping skills? If they are helpful, where do they fall? Do they fall under actually behavioral or psychological means of actually dealing with the problem or coping with the problem? Or do they fall under emotional aspects? So I'll use an example. You don't like the way your partner chews, right? And that there's nothing you can do about it. That's an interpersonal thing. You don't like the way your partner chews. An unhelpful coping skill will be nagging them about it, because what that will do is just create more tension, more stress, more anger, more negative emotions. And emotional focused coping skill would be, an example would be, you know what, when it's dinner time, just put on your favorite music and put it at the highest decibel possible, right? Just dinner comes with music now, right? You don't hear they're chewing, you're okay, yeah, right? It's emotionally dealt with it. But a solution focused coping skill would be, just don't cook anything that they have to chew, right? And then that way they don't chew and you don't hear anything. Soups for dinner all the time. That's how I want people to kind of take this and go through it, right? What are my stresses? What are the ways that I've been coping with them? Have they been helping? Yes, I will share the handout, and then you can post it also for people who understand it to try and use it. Okay. Dealing with stress. What does dealing with our stresses do? Actually focusing on and dealing with our stress builds self-confidence. It actually allows us to take personal responsibility for the things that are going on in our own lives. What it does is it gives us a sense of an ability to positively think. Because I'm thinking for the solutions of this, here I am. I ended up not just focusing on the negativity or the stress, but I actually think positively. It also leads us into creating goals and plans and allows us to effectively communicate that. And it is a fantastic physical health attribute. Any questions so far?
I guess I find it a little strange talking. I don't know if this fits in really with this or the last one, but I'm personal wise, I find it strange because like I'm usually under stress at a constant kind of thing, that it's become a thing where you can deal with it, but when it's at a calm state, you almost feel like you need constant stress because you're so used to being stressed. So I get really bad, like panicky. I guess that's the anxiety part when I'm not stressed, because I always feel like I'm doing something wrong if I'm not stressed about it.
Yes, and
So.
and thank you very much for sharing that, Olivia. That is true for a lot of people. We've lived in such a very stressful environment for so long that has now become the normal. And that when the stresses are reduced, we don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
Our system is off kilter. But that is not healthy either, not knowing what to do. Like, that is not healthy to be at that high level, because it's quite damaging to like it's a raised level of cortisol, and cortisol is not really great for all the organs in your body, right? That's why it needs to fluctuate up and down every day. It needs to be used up. So what is important is, even the uneasiness that we feel, we mustn't fill it with stress so that we feel easy, but rather we must learn to get used to that uneasiness without the stress. Does that make sense? And that's why it's important, and I'll go back to it. That's why it's important, if we are addressing the stress and writing our stresses down and dealing with them and seeing that we are choosing positive, whether emotion focused or whether it's problem focused means of actually dealing with the stress. It allows us to give ourselves a little bit of a reprieve, a little bit of a break, right? To accept the state of not being in that excess stress.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, because that's something that I struggle with on a daily basis. That
is very understandable. It's very normal. And by normal, I mean it's what a lot of us are used to. And I say that because even I am still a work in progress, because I'm a parent, I'm working full time, and I'm in school full time. So my stress level is always high. So that's how I operate. But when I do this and I reduce my stress level and I say, you know what, I need, my stress level is high. I've done these things to sort of reduce the tension, but I want to actually reduce my stress level. So I'm going to take a time and watch a movie.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the stress bucket now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, well, so even if I say I'm going to take a time and watch a movie, I then begin to feel guilty, and I want to pick a short movie, right? So what I have to change is how I'm emotionally enjoying my time. So as much as I love movies, now I've had to substitute it with, okay, so I'm just gonna do nothing. I'm gonna go on a walk with one of my kids because they're gonna have 98 questions that have nothing to do with the things that I'm thinking about or the things that I really need to think about. That would take my mind off the things that I'm thinking about. And what that has done is, it's behaviorally, I have changed the things that I'm doing, but also I've also incorporated like a positive emotion, because I didn't think it was anything like any big deal, but now it's something that, like, you know, my kids are looking forward to that one-on-one walk time with that. Now I have to, it's almost like scheduled now.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that.
Yesterday you went on the walk, so today I go on the walk. And last time you went on the walk, so I have to go on the walk. And then it drives, like doing that. I encourage it, like, you know, even going on a walk with your dog, like changing the behavior, the scenario to a place. And I like doing it with my kids because of the questions that they ask. It has nothing, it always has nothing to do with what's stressing me out. Right? And I have to answer it. Like, why are people's houses different colors? People like different colors, but why? Okay, that spends 10 minutes of wasting my time trying to figure out, how do I explain to a 7-year-old people are allowed to have different colored houses, right? And that takes 7 minutes of my life without focusing on school and work and, you know, bills and everything else. So I'm glad, Andrea, that you it doesn't show on the outside, but, you know, my stress level has always been significantly high. Thank you. So there are other means of actually reducing stress, and you might have heard of mindfulness before. And there are loads of other programs and other mindful-based activities that, you know, we engage in that are helpful. And I encourage you to find what mindful activity that is helpful, that will reduce your stress in the moment. For me, I tried the muscle relaxation. I tried the breathing 5 in, 5 out. None of it really worked for me. But what I recognize is just changing, because usually these I do still in the same environment that I'm stressed out about. But, you know, going for a walk, just stepping outside, right, and being intentional about what I'm seeing and what I'm doing reduces my stress too. Excuse me. So please, I encourage you to find what deliberately works for you. So how do you support people who are highly stressed? If you remember, we're going through the same schedule. You would know if your friends are stressed only if you know when your friends are not stressed. Does that make sense? So pay attention to the people around you, the people in your circle. Pay attention to how they behave, how they are engaged. Pay attention to how they deal with the situations that come their way. And you will be able to identify what their stresses are. So the first step in supporting someone who's highly stressed is approach them with the intention of assisting them relieve some of that stress. Right? So ask the question empathetically: how are you doing? How are you really doing? I've noticed A, B, and C. I've noticed you doing this. I've noticed you doing that. I've noticed this happening. That's why I'm asking the question. Give reassurance, give the information that, yeah, stress is a very, very normal part of human life. And if you can, play that video for them again. Like, we need stress to wake up. We need stress to be motivated enough to wake up. We need enough stress hormones to wake up from our bed every day, right? So stress is very normal. But as you're given that information, you're given that support, please make sure that the person still maintains and has the autonomy and the control, and options is what you're given, not advice, right? Give options, give information, don't give advice. Because advice is, if I were you, I'll do this, but you're not me, right? So kind of let's make sure we don't take control away from people, but rather we validate their personhood. The next step is to attend to the individual. And attending to the individual is literally paying attention and listening to them without judgment, listening to them for the emotions behind the words that they're seeing. If you're really listening, that's when you would know if the stress relief is actually coming. It will be really helpful if you're attending to the person, you're like, you know what, let's sit in front on your front porch instead of inside the house. Let's just walk to the playground and watch some kids play as you tell me about this, right? Try to change the scenario as you attend to the individual. And then the next step is point the individual to professional support. And these professional support could include, family therapists, family doctors, counselors, and even ministers, right? Church ministers, if the person actually does go to church, right? Include them as ministers so they're able to connect with them. And then finally, encourage other support. Encouraging other support is encouraging the individual to seek other support, but also encouraging others to be there for the individual, right? That's very important. So this, as you will see throughout our sessions, is the same theme that I use in helping people understand. Because and I picked this acronym because people who know Greek a little bit would know that agape is, loving someone unconditionally or loving someone without expecting anything back. So I think if we want to care for each other in the community, we should love without expecting anything in return. Mm-hmm. So how do we help ourselves, or how do we make sure that we are not overwhelmed by stress? I encourage everyone to find that specific individual that they can connect with, that they can share their emotions with, that they can share their thoughts with. Be active. As I said, being physically active uses up the cortisol that is released in your body. So every day, if you're able to do something that will get you to the point of sweating, you have used up that day's build up of cortisol in your system. Right? Take notice. Take notice of, be more aware, be more present. This is where people's mindfulness comes in. And pay attention to what it feels like when you're stressed. Pay attention to what's going on in your body. This is the only way to positively change our environment and what we need to do. So learn more about mindfulness, learn more and be able to do it. Have you ever, stepped outside and figured out, oh, who lives in this house? Like, ask yourself that as you're about to open your front door, and look at your own house with a new look, a new sort of open notification or notice around your own self. Learn something new. Learning something new rewires the way our brain, our mind thinks and processes things. And it's very important for us to do that. And then finally, give back. And when I say give back, I mean volunteer yourself, your time, volunteer to the local community with FCSS on board and Neighbourhood Place on board with this. There are loads of things that we can volunteer ourselves, our time and our energies to get to help in the community. This is essential and this is important. Any questions?